morning, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us. My name is Jane Nichols. I'm the General Manager for Industry Engagement at the Infrastructure Sustainability Council. Before we go any further, I would like to make an acknowledgement to country. The Infrastructure Sustainability Council would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today. We acknowledge their deep connection to land, water and culture, and pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. I have to say that I am really delighted to be hosting such an inspirational and important webinar this morning with one of our members, Refugee Talent, and their partners, Talent Beyond Boundaries. We're going to be discussing a new solution in matching workforce capacity need with talented refugees via skilled migration pathways. Speaking to us initially, we'll be talking to Sasya Yanakaran, the ANZ Director of Talent Beyond Boundaries, followed by Luna Gawi, the Recruitment Manager for Refugee Talent. And this will be followed by the experience of a candidate with Ibrahim Awad and the perspective of his employer with Lee Hardingham. We'll then move to questions at the end of that session, and I can assure you we'll have you all back at work, or perhaps better still lunch at 12:30. But before we go any further, I'd like to play a video.
I have a master's degree in financial engineering from the Lebanese University in Tripoli, Lebanon. I am fluent in 3 languages, Arabic, French, and English.
I graduated in 2008 from Damascus University as a software engineer.
And then I continued my master, but unfortunately I couldn't continue it because of war.
As a Syrian living in Lebanon, it's really very hard. You don't have a residence permit. You can't work legally.
Most people will dream of owning a car or a house or becoming married or fathering children someday. Over the course of the last 25 years, I've kind of trained myself not to dream and not to have these high expectations.
We're always facing hiring challenges.
We have a high benchmark for the people that we want to bring into Iris.
Hiring is very challenging for us. The competition for talent is intense. We often require quite specialised skill sets which are restricted in the market.
I guess what we were hoping for was to resolve our labour shortage, but also contribute to that humanitarian aspect as well.
We're in a necessity to find pockets of unidentified talent that we can get access to.
And you're likely to find those, as we did, through Talent Beyond Boundaries.
Honestly, Talent Beyond Boundaries stood by me all the way through it.
On 23/2/2019, I got my visa.
When I told my wife, she told me, you're just kidding me.
I can't describe the feeling because it's really very emotional to describe it. You can't, there are no words.
The minute I set foot on that plane, I actually dared to start dreaming again.
It was a turning point in my life. It was like a party.
TBB had done a selection process and provided us with a pool of high-quality candidates.
The best things that have come out of employing Ali is really achieving a skilled employee who's come to us already very competent.
The process that is supported by Talent Beyond Boundaries makes it easy. They normalise recruitment of high-quality talent wherever it is so that it is the same as hiring domestically.
It's critical for Australia's ongoing competitiveness for us to not just look within our local pool, to lift our eyes up and identify talented people living elsewhere and under constraints.
There is a lot of talented people. They are not just talented, they need to start a new life.
Either they are doctors, nurses, engineers. Most of them are graduated people and they are living as refugees. They have skills They really have skills.
What I'd say to other employers, it's really no more difficult than employing someone locally.
Now I can actually think for the future. I can establish a career. I actually have goals for the next 2 and 3 years, and I never had that in my life.
I started learning piano. I started learning video editing. It's changed totally.
I felt I had a purpose now. I had a purpose other than just surviving.
I'm working in awesome company. I'm living in beautiful city. All my career has changed. I started to build new one.
I am extremely lucky to be here today. Not everyone gets this chance. And honestly, there should be more NGOs like TBB and more employers who are willing to offer people like me a chance to be human.
Wow. You know, these are exceptional situations and ones that we are, I'm sure, all too familiar with, certainly at the ISC, as we experience the infrastructure-led recovery, the reality of the need for greater capacity and capability is so significant. So this webinar could not be more timely, and I'm so grateful to our members who've joined us today. Before we get started, I'd briefly like to just take you through our first two speakers, a little bit about them. Normally I don't go through quite so much information, but they're very impressive individuals. So firstly, to Satya Yanakaran, the ANZ Director of Talent Beyond Boundaries. Satya is a very accomplished immigration lawyer. She began working alongside Talent Beyond Borders in her role with EY, where her team managed several candidates, their visa applications. And prior to that, she was many years with global migration firm Fragaman. Satya is now managing the rollout of Australia's groundbreaking skilled refugee pilot program. And this program will enable 100 displaced families to move to safety via skilled migration pathways. She's also leading on plans to expand Talent Beyond Borders program into New Zealand. And we're delighted to hear that because, of course, the ISC is covering both of the Australian and the New Zealand markets. Following Safa, we'll have Luna Gawi, the Recruitment Manager for Refugee Talent. In Syria, Luna worked as the designated officer in charge of the World Health Organization Country Home Office in Homs. While she was there, she received the Director General Global Award of Excellence, recognising her exceptional contribution under very difficult conditions during one of the most serious and chronic emergencies in the world. In 2017, Luna arrived in Australia on a humanitarian refugee visa. Luna is now responsible for managing the international recruitment process for refugee talent as part of a partnership with Talent Beyond Boundaries. So without further ado, let me hand over to the two ladies. Firstly, to Satya. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Jane, and hello to all of you. Thank you for being here, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to discuss this very important mission for us with you. I just wanted to give you an overview of, what Talent Beyond Boundaries is, and really that video that you screamed at the beginning summarizes, why we're here and what we do. But Talent Beyond Boundaries essentially is looking to bring together two sides of a problem. On one side of the world, we have the humanitarian crisis, which, there have been many crises over many years. There's millions of people displaced. And the primary way of, coming out of those displaced situations is usually through a humanitarian pathway. And we definitely need governments to continue to do what they're doing in helping refugees who are displaced to resettle in countries and move them to safety. But as we know, the supply and demand in that situation just do not match. And Talent Beyond Boundaries is really here to, provide another pathway for refugees to be able to get out of their situations. And really it's looking at the fact that, over half or almost half the world's refugees are of working age. And essentially what happens when they're displaced is those skills are almost just going to waste. Whilst on the other side of the spectrum is that globally, businesses are screaming skill shortages. They're struggling to fill their roles locally. And in the time of COVID, that's only been exacerbated where people are not able to even, I guess, internationally recruit the skills that they need. So Talent Beyond Boundaries is trying to connect business with skilled refugees to be able to solve these two problems in our way. And essentially, skilled refugees have not been able to participate in international recruitment as with everyone else. I mean, we're all able to move for work, but the main barriers why refugees are unable to access that pathway is because there's a lot of barriers, including documentary ones, and migration being, I guess, the primary barrier for refugees to be able to access skilled migration. So Talent Beyond Boundaries really, I guess, sits in the middle to connect both employers with these refugees in our process. We have what's called a talent catalogue, an online database that enables any refugee around the world to log on and submit their skills information, a CV, a LinkedIn profile if they've got one, and provide some more information on their experience. And that allows us to go to business, understand business as to what their skills needs might be, and use this talent catalogue to essentially provide a short list of candidates that an employer can choose from. We are located globally, so we're in Australia, the UK and Canada as our primary destination countries, as we call it. In Jordan and Lebanon, we've also got presence where our team there are able to sort of interact with a large pool of our refugees that are in that area, but we do work remotely with a number of refugees in other locations around the world. So really, we've got a talented pool that has not been tapped into by business before. So we really hope that through this program to bring refugees to the forefront and make them visible to employers who need the skills that they have. So if we could just move to the next slide. I will give you a quick snapshot of, I guess, the program that we're running in Australia at the moment. We do have similar pilot programs in the UK and Canada, and essentially the principles are the same. Skilled migration in Australia, again, the barriers for most refugees are really around documentary barriers because people are not thinking of their qualifications, certificates and employment references when they're fleeing war and conflict. So essentially the Australian government from the 1st of July this year is enabling Australian businesses to enter into a labour agreement with the Department of Home Affairs to access particular concessions under that program to sponsor refugees under existing visa categories that are already in the migration system. The concessions really are focused on addressing the major barriers that refugees face in accessing skilled migration. We have currently 103 occupations included in the pilot that business can sponsor candidates for. Our pilot is to run for the next 2 years, so up until July 2023, and we have 100 primary applicant places to fill. We've already filled 43 of those positions with companies committing to hire or having visas approved. And so we've got just over half of the 100 to go, which is fantastic because the uptake with business has been, tremendous. The visas that you can actually sponsor candidates for are the subclass 186 employer-sponsored permanent visa. And given the purpose of our program, we are leading with that. We are asking businesses that they are, sponsoring candidates for permanent residence, moving them from an uncertain situation to safety and security. And the concessions that business and candidates will get is that there's a waiver of work experience and skills assessment requirements. There's a reduced level of English that candidates have to satisfy. There's a higher age cutoff, so you can sponsor someone who's less than 50 years as opposed to less than 45 at the moment. There's no labour market testing requirements, and there's currently flexible arrangements for candidates who have trouble getting police checks and passports because they need to go back to governments they're fleeing to obtain those documents. In order to access the pilot program, TBB must endorse the company and the candidate, and that's what will start the visa process. So I'll probably just hand over now to my colleague Luna just to talk about how the process would start and finish, as to how you can hire, how we work with you to support the hiring process right through to when candidates actually arrive in Australia. So over to you, Luna.
Thank you, Safia, and thank you everyone for being here with us today. I'm just going to explain briefly how the process works. So we start with you, the businesses. So businesses identify the role and the skill shortages that needs to be filled and provided with a job description. We then start the process of shortlisting candidates based on the specific job descriptions. We will identify potential candidates from our talent catalog, where we got more than 30,000 talented registered refugees who are living in displacement in our database. We also support the recruitment process. We facilitate remote recruitment, including videos, interview, and any other testing if that's required. It is an employer-led process, and we ask business to conduct same interview process, no difference to any other normal hiring the company used to do. If a TBB applicant is successful and the employer wants to hire, then the employer issues a job offer and contracts. We then also support the candidate by conducting informal decision-making session and providing the candidate with clarifications on the contracts and answer any concerns. Then we move to next step. We support the employer and the TBB applicants through the visa application process. Now, visa is granted and candidate ready to relocate, we still provide support. We will help the employer to prepare for the arrival of the new recruit. Once the visa is granted, we initiate what we call the settlement planning. So we work with the employer, the relevant settlement services in the area, with the candidates and their family to ensure that the candidates and their family receive all the support they need. And we not stopping here, we also provide post-arrival support. So we provide ongoing support via regular check-ins with a new recruit and their families and the direct manager up to 12 months post-arrival. Thank you.
Thank you, Sathya and Luna, very much. I'd like to now take us into a perspective from a candidate's position, and I'd like to welcome Ibrahim Awad, who is a mechanical engineer, and he was a TBB refugee candidate. So a little about Ibrahim. When conflict broke out in his home country of Syria, Ibrahim, a qualified mechanical engineer with several years' experience in the water and wastewater sector, found himself living displaced in Jordan. Like many refugees, Ibrahim was prohibited from working legally in his profession, and his career prospects were accordingly very limited. This all changed in 2019 when Ibrahim was employed to work on the Westgate Tunnel project in Melbourne. Problems with the project, and I can assure you not with Ibrahim, meant his role was made redundant 9 months after. But he quickly found work as a project engineer with Aquatech in Shepparton, where he now helps deliver water projects right across Australia. Can I welcome Ibrahim?
Thank you very much, Jane, and thank you everyone for being here. As Jane said, I'm a mechanical engineer. I did graduate from Jordan University of Science and Technology with a bachelor degree in mechanical engineering. I also have a master degree in environmental engineering. When I first graduated from my bachelor degree, I struggled to find work in Jordan, being from a Syrian background, as Syrians are not allowed to have a work permit to work in Jordan. So I went to this seminar with my brother, talking about Talent Beyond Boundaries and what they do, and how they connect international employers to skilled refugees. So I went to that seminar, and then after that, I went to the Talent Beyond Boundaries website, uploaded my CV, which pretty much back then had nothing in it. I was just like a recent graduate. After that, I was able to work in Jordan, but unfortunately, it wasn't legal. So I was able to work through like freelancing sometimes, or just like just an agreement between me and like a person, like nothing covered. There's no work rights, nothing like that. After starting working with my employer in Jordan, I worked in the water and wastewater industry, designing wastewater treatment plants. After that, I received a call from Talent Beyond Boundaries representative in Jordan. And the call was like, yeah, you uploaded your CV in our like website, and there's a Australian companies who are interested to hire mechanical engineers. I was like, what? Who is Talent Beyond Boundaries? Like, it was like a few months ago. Like I had like, I literally forgot that I did that. And then I was a bit skeptical at the start because like Australian company want to hire me, like I'm in Jordan in the middle of nowhere, and it was a bit like funny at the start. But then like I said, okay, I will give it a shot. And Talent Beyond Boundaries helped with every single process. So from the start, they helped with telling us how to prepare our CVs properly for the Australian market, and then helping with interviews as well. So we had one-way interviews, then mock interviews, and then after that I got my interview with John Holland, and I got interviewed to work on the Westgate Tunnel project in Melbourne. After the interview, I received my job offer from John Holland, which was a wonderful day. Everyone in Talent Beyond Boundaries and myself, we were like celebrating to receive the job offer. And I remember on that day we went out for dinner, just like as a celebration that we've got the job offer. After that, Talent Beyond Boundaries also helped with the visa application. So we applied the visa. Back then it was like a different visa type, I think. But we Talent Beyond Boundaries helped out with all of these processes. So we applied the visa, and then we went through all of the medical like examinations and all of other required paperwork to go through. After that, I continued my work in the water sector in Jordan. I was just like waiting until my visa gets processed, and then after a few months, I received a phone call from the embassy, and they told me that my visa was approved. And that was literally one of the happiest moments in my life. Was such an amazing day. Like at the same moment, I just called my mom and told her that I got my visa approved, and she started crying straight away. But it was like a very emotional moment. I told everyone within like TBB that the visa got approved. I received the phone call, and everyone was celebrating. And we told John Holland as well that we received that approval of the visa, and they were like very happy as well that finally I will get to meet them and then work with them. After that, I had to do my I had to work with my company in Jordan just to do the notice period before I leave to Australia. And then in September 2019, I got on the plane and flew to Melbourne. On the arrival day, everyone from Talent Beyond Boundaries, also Lee from John Holland, they went to the airport as a welcoming like party kind of thing. It was an amazing day. Everyone was so welcoming, and everyone is like welcoming and friendly. They helped pretty much from every single step, from arriving to Australia, providing temporary accommodation, supporting with everything I would need in a new place. For me, like moving to Melbourne was like a huge change. Just like living from Jordan to Melbourne, it's such like a wonderful change. Thankfully, currently I'm able to work in Australia legally with my profession, and without any fear of being exploited by employers, and not being able to have a work permit or having restrictions on movement or anything like that. So that is a very great, I'm very grateful for that, and it's like a very amazing thing to be able to have. Currently in Australia, I'm able to do everything I love. I've started like chasing some hobbies as well. I started learning surfing a few months ago, just before the lockdown. So yeah, I used to go surfing on weekends, just like to learn how to surf, and going hiking on weekends, just enjoying the nature and all of what Australia has to offer, which is a great and amazing place to be in. And thank you everyone for being here again.
Thank you, Ibrahim. That was a wonderful journey to hear about. Please, can I ask you all to be thinking about the questions you'd like to ask any of our speakers today, and if you use your Q&A function at the base of your screen, we'll capture those and be able to ask all of those questions on your behalf. And now to the employer perspective. Lee Hardingham was the former GM of Social Procurement and Inclusion at John Holland. With senior experience on major infrastructure and civil construction projects, Lee is currently Managing Director and Principal Consultant at Hardingham Proprietary Limited, maximising economic, environmental, social and cultural outcomes for a range of her clients. In 2019, as a General Manager of Social Procurement and Inclusion at John Holland, Lee was a driving force behind the decision to consider candidates from TBB's talent pool of skilled refugees. When Ibrahim finally walked through the gate at Melbourne Airport, Lee was one of the smiling faces waiting to greet him. And I can see that smile is still there today. Lee, thank you. Over to you.
Thank you, Jane. Hello, everybody. When Talent Beyond Boundaries and Refugee Talent first approached us with the idea of recruiting from the refugee population, we were quite excited by the proposal. We had a large infrastructure project in Melbourne, and we needed to fill a large workforce with the skills we needed over the 5-year build. We quickly identified that mechanical and electrical engineers were going to be in short supply and would be hard to find. So we had to find creative ways to mitigate that talent shortage. We asked Talent Beyond Boundaries and Refugee Talent to try and identify candidates that met our needs. They came back to us with 4 CVs and provided a short video with each candidate speaking to their experience. It was tough to choose, but we shortlisted 2 candidates and arranged formal Zoom interviews. I'm not sure how nervous the candidates were, but we certainly were. We knew that those candidates would be suitable for our role, but we also knew that we would be offering them, or at least one of them, an opportunity that would change their lives. The interview process was fairly standard. It included HR, the project roles, line manager, and our general superintendent. We were looking for skills, but just as importantly, we wanted to ensure that we believed we could support the successful candidate in the workplace, and that'd be a good fit for our company. We already employed a diverse project workforce that included 40 refugees, so we were fairly confident we could provide the culturally safe workplace that was needed. As it turned out, it was so hard to choose that we actually offered both candidates a role, but unfortunately, one wasn't able to accept. The next step was to apply for the humanitarian visa to allow Ibrahim to come to Australia. Talent Beyond Boundaries connected us with a migration agent, and we worked through the visa process. I personally found this a very moving experience and a great privilege to be able to participate in. Talent Beyond Boundaries and Refugee Talent were with us every step of the way and helped us with any issues and eventually the logistics of getting Ibrahim to Australia. His arrival was awesome, a great celebration of the hard work everyone had contributed, but most of all, having Ibrahim safely in Australia and ready to start working in his profession. I still get emotional. Settlement services helped him settle into suitable accommodation, and a week or so later, he arrived at work. He joined a team of engineers working on a major tunnel construction, and his contribution to the team was just as we'd hoped. His team were glad to have his skills, and he was no different to any other new starter on the project. Engaging Ibrahim was also a great inspiration to our whole workforce and company. We already had the other refugees, and we had many more after Ibrahim joined the teams, but They'd already settled in Australia. Finding and bringing Ibrahim direct to Australia demonstrated the real value of our commitment to employ refugees and how companies like John Holland and others that work with Talent Beyond Boundaries really can change people's lives. Our success with Ibrahim and Ibrahim's ongoing success in Australia is due to the dedication and commitment of the beautiful people at Talent Beyond Boundaries and Refugee Talent. We felt very proud to be associated with such a great initiative and the opportunities it provides. So if you're an employer and you are considering hiring through Talent Beyond Boundaries and Refugee Talent, my advice is simply to make contact with them and discuss your talent needs. It really is a superb pipeline of talent, almost as simple as any other international recruitment process, and just a fabulous thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. I'm sure that it doesn't matter how many years go by, it's this achievement on all sides is something that nobody would ever forget. Thank you for sharing that with us. And if I could invite all of our speakers back to the screen, that would be great, because now we'd like to open to you for any questions that you may wish to ask. And I have a question here from Krishna Karangia. What is the current capacity of your organisation to support participants? So would that be, thank you, Sasha.
That's okay, I can take that one. Sorry, I was struggling to move my mouse to the unmute button. Thank you. Yeah, in terms of our capacity, I mean, as we've, as my colleague Luna went through the process of hiring right through to settlement, up to 12 months after candidates arrive. We have our team in Jordan and Lebanon to assist with, support that recruitment process and engaging with candidates who have job opportunities. And then once candidates are actually arrived in Australia, then we work with both employers as well as local settlement services agency, and like TBB and Refugee Talent's role is really to, I guess, facilitate the needs of that candidate for that 12-month period after. So, it's not, I guess, just TBB involved in this process. We are working both with employers as well as other agencies locally in particular, so that we can really provide, I guess, that wraparound assistance. I hope, Luna, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add in terms of capacity.
Yeah, so basically it's a cooperation between us, Refugee Talent, Talent Beyond Boundary, and also with the employer and the settlement agency. We want to make sure that the candidates arrive to Australia, yes, on a working basis, but also the family needs and they are settling well in the country as well.
Yeah. And if I could just give you an indication, I mean, we've actually, the pilot that we have running in Australia at the moment is in fact our second pilot. So to date, we've moved, I think, approximately 76 people to Australia, including family members. So that's using the same model. And, we're in touch with some candidates who are still in that 12-month period. So we're well equipped to support participants, both from the employer end as well as with candidates coming through the program.
Thank you. Another question regarding New Zealand. Does the process run in New Zealand currently?
Yeah, good question. So New Zealand, we're actually currently exploring ways to, I guess, set up something similar with the government as we have in Australia. At the moment, we are working with a couple of employers who are wanting to actually, I guess, interview some of our candidates. But in terms of the framework, we are looking at using existing visa pathways, I guess, to prove the point as we have in Australia and the other destinations. Once we, I guess, provide that proof of concept, then we can set up something very similar to the labour agreement in Australia. But those discussions are in train at the moment.
Thank you, Sasha. That's great. Another one for you, actually, Sasha. How much does it cost to hire through this program? Are you able to provide any indicative costs?
Sure, I can. I think on our presentation, we had a slide that kind of sets this out for you. So just breaking, I guess, the process down into three stages. Recruitment costs are actually nil. So both Talent Beyond Boundaries, I mean, we don't charge anything at all for the recruitment, nor do we charge anything for the settlement support services that we provide. We're fully philanthropically funded, and we're here because we want to change the system. The bulk of the costs in this process are really around visa-related costs. So whatever you would usually incur to sponsor someone on an employer-sponsored permanent visa would be exactly the same. The variables really are around family size, because in Australia, the visa charges are based on, each member of family unit that's included in the application. There's also migration agent fees to, support you through that visa process. We've indicated there that, in our experience, the average cost has been between 10 to 20,000, but the variables are the one that will sort of really determine the final cost. With the relocation costs, at a minimum, we expect employers to cover both flights for the candidate and their family, as well as temporary accommodation on arrival for up to 4 weeks. That's at a minimum. But the principle really for us is we're trying to level the playing field, that refugees are, offered the same kind of relocation package, if you like, if you've got one in the business, to someone who's comparable that would be relocating in that similar circumstance. So we really would work with you to, I guess, understand what your support is already, and whatever that might be, that would be your standard rates in terms of the relocation costs. We also work with local settlement service agencies, and what we're doing at the moment is actually working with them to find out, for certain businesses, they may want to actually engage those settlement service agencies because they're experts in settling refugees and their families. And you can pay a cost to have a case manager look after that family. So it's really, I guess, up to how much the employer not only wants to budget, but also to be involved in that settlement process.
Thank you very much. A question for Ibrahim. How quickly were you able to settle in and feel comfortable in the Australian work environment?
I would say pretty quickly, because like from the general environment that the workplace in Australia is like very cultural friendly and very diverse as well. So within the West Catalan project, there was like a few other refugees as well, and like a few people from the same background. So I was able, just to blend in straight away, I would say. And Australia is a multicultural place as it is, and it's just a very nice and friendly environment to be in.
Thank you. And a question for Lee. Lee, can you tell us what sort of, in your experience, what sort of dynamic do refugee candidates bring to teams?
A very important one. I guess most Australian companies are trying to ensure that they do have a very diverse workforce, are culturally competent, are able to employ people from many different backgrounds and ways of working. And the best thing that any company can do to demonstrate that is to do it successfully. So what we did with Ibrahim, and the way that we went over and above just recruiting refugees who were already living close to the project in Melbourne, was to show that we would go the extra mile to ensure that the offer of employment with John Holland on this project was something that anybody could aspire to be part of. So finding a company like Talent Beyond Boundaries Refugee Talent who could help us reach across the waters to find Ibrahim in Jordan and bring him to Australia, to settle him into Australia with settlement services, and to offer him employment where he could work in his profession successfully, was critically important, and a great demonstration to our workforce that we would almost do anything we could to help people be successful in their career. Unfortunately, as you've heard, Ibrahim was made redundant 9 months later, along with the vast majority of people working on that project. So it wasn't like a small number of people were unfortunately made redundant. But the ability of Ibrahim to go and get another job so quickly, I guess, is all part of the way that he was settled into Australia by the people you've been talking to today. And, for John Holland to have their fingerprints on that is something that they're still very, very proud of.
Thank you. Luna, I think you might be able to help us with this question. Can hiring through TBB help improve a project's IS rating?
Yeah, definitely. It will help meet IS rating. That's including increasing inclusion and diversity in the workplace. Also will help with the strategic workforce planning rating, as well as the other ratings, including jobs and skills and workforce culture and well-being. Also, Refugee Talent is a certified social enterprise that helps meet social procurement as then target that infrastructure project may have as well.
Thank you very much. That's great to hear. Satya or Luna, I'll leave this to whoever's better to answer this one. Can you tell us more about the types of candidates currently available for hire on your talent catalogue?
Yeah, I'll take that one. Yeah, sure. We have like a variety of occupations. So we have more than 150 occupations are currently represented in our talent catalog. So we have all sort of occupations. We have doctors, engineers, tech professionals, PhD holders, as well as we have trade workers, chefs and butchers. So really we have all occupations there.
Fantastic. And another one for Sasha or Luna. To what extent has COVID-19 impacted your ability to bring refugee workers to Australia?
Yeah, great question. And look, we even in the middle of COVID, we were actually able to move two candidates right through. And it's really been, I guess, COVID has, I guess, increased the challenge of navigating the immigration process. I mean, the main issue for candidates, I mean, we had a candidate who had their visa approved, they had a flight booked, and then in March of last year, the lockdown happened. The borders closed and they couldn't fly. So we as Talent Beyond Boundaries essentially went through the travel exemption process with the Australian Border Force to secure that travel exemption. It took a couple of times. I'm not going to say it was easy, but we did get the travel exemption and we did end up getting a flight by the end of that year for this family to actually move out, which was great. And we also, for this year, we had our first candidate arrive last weekend, in fact. So I got to do my first airport arrival, and, you know, just being there as soon as the candidate got off the flight, it's really a moment, you know, a moment to cherish. But essentially, again, it was just navigating the migration process, and TBB was really involved in doing that. The good thing about the pilot that we have at the moment, though, is that the department has agreed to priority processing as well as streamlined processing for travel exemptions. So we do have the announcement that the borders are opening next month, which is fantastic. But up until we do still need to go through travel exemptions, the processing is very streamlined. We've had our first candidate already approved under the current pilot, and that visa was approved from like within 7 weeks, start to finish. So they're ready to pretty much come out here. The other major challenge during COVID was flights. So even if visas were granted, actually getting a flight or, you know, having exorbitant flight costs, that was a hurdle that we had to overcome. But luckily we had businesses who were just like, okay, if we need to get someone out here, then it was just assessing, okay, do they need them straight away or do we wait to adjust that, you know, the flight cost? The pilot at the moment with borders opening, literally today, we've seen that there's flight availability next month. So we're actually expecting to see many more candidates sort of arrive in the next couple of months. So I guess the answer to the question is yes, it has been challenging, but we've been able to do it through COVID. So if we can do it through COVID, we can do it at any time.
I can imagine. And what happens when you reach 100, when the pilot is complete? What are the next steps beyond that? Will you get a bigger number? Will it become a...
Sure.
For you to answer.
Yeah, great question. So what do we want after the 100? We want this to be an absolutely normal process. And what we're doing here is purely because there is no migration pathway allowing refugees and Australian business to meet each other. So at the end of the 2 years, once we meet the 100, we will be advocating to government to actually create a legislated visa pathway in its own right to allow business to sponsor skilled refugees. And so, you know, at the end of the 100, given the uptake so far, I think we'll be able to meet the 100 within the next 3 to 6 months and spend the rest of the pilot to actually move people. But really, we would love to have business with us at the end of that 2 years, with multiple businesses going to government saying, we've done this, we've proven that it works, government, we need you to do this. And it really, I think, governments listen to business, and that's what we're really looking for, to stand side by side with business to get that ultimate outcome. And it will be globally leading if that happens in Australia, because there is no pathway at the moment. So if we can get that done, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, so normalisation really is what you're looking for ultimately.
Yeah.
Now that's, I have no more questions. If anyone does have a question that they haven't popped into the chat, please do that, or into the Q&A, please do that now. And while we're waiting to see if there are any more, I'd just like to say that we're really delighted that refugee talent beyond boundaries are going to be very visible at the ISC's conference, which will be March 25. Sorry, I'm giving you New Zealand dates now, or a combination of the two. Our conference in Australia will be in Sydney on March the 2nd and 3rd. So we're really looking forward to having an exhibition throughout the 2 days from refugee talent and talent beyond boundaries. They'll be able to talk to you a bit more about any specific interests you have, but I'd hate to think that you delayed your inquiry until that time. It's certainly with the names and email addresses, phone numbers on screen. Please get in touch as soon as you're able. I do have another question that's come up. I'd like to know, thank you, Rob, I'd like to know, in the event that the refugee gets made redundant and is unable to procure another job, what happens to that person's visa?
Sure. As the candidates are coming, sorry, I just jumped in because it's an immigration question. So essentially, because our candidates would have permanent visas, and this is also the reason why we lead with the permanent visa, is essentially there's no issue of them having to go back home. And, you know, home for them is they don't have the option of going home. So for the refugee candidate, they're able to remain in Australia indefinitely as an Australian permanent resident, and being able to find, like, going through that process of finding another job, we're going to be there for that. I mean, at the end of the day, you know, we're not just going to leave them high and dry in that circumstance. So from a visa perspective, there's no issue. And there's also no issue from the employer's perspective as well. And I think that's also important, because a lot of the employer-sponsored visas, the temporary ones, have sponsorship obligations, where, you know, you need to report to the department when someone leaves. But in this instance, it's like with any other Australian employee. If they're made redundant, then you just move on, essentially.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, well, it seems that that's the end of the questions. I'd really like to thank Refugee Talent and Talent Beyond Boundaries for really creating an opportunity for us to better understand something both important from a societal perspective, but also from a jobs capability and growth perspective. This is certainly a pathway forward that is invaluable. So thank you for taking the time to share that with us. To our audience today, could I ask that we have a very, very short questionnaire at the end of the session. Love to hear your thoughts. Always wanting to make sure that these webinars are really set up to respond to your needs and interests. So thank you for that in anticipation, and we'll give you a very few early minutes to get back to work. So thank you everyone very much.